Hi there, this is Hugh Griffiths and I'm going to be giving a series of 3 talks on Photography 101, Photography Basics. This first talk we're going to cover composition, but in later ones we'll look at the controls on your camera and a brief look at editing your photos once you've taken them. What are my credentials? First of all, I'm the chairman of our local camera club, the Malden Camera Club in southwest London, and I'm also a licentiate of the Royal Photographic Society, which is a distinction given for a good style of photography, good quality of photography. But I guess the main credential I've got is that I really love photography. I like taking photographs, I like looking at them in exhibitions or competitions or wherever. I like editing them. I like to make pictures that stand out and that give my viewer some pleasure. It gives me huge satisfaction to do that. And in this short series, I want to help each of you to have that same sense of satisfaction with your very own photographs. So let's move on. We'll move straight on to composition. The first one is that, and I chose composition as the first episode because I want to encourage you straight away to get out and start taking photographs. So we'll look at composition now. And a couple of quotes to start with. Beauty can be seen in all things, and seeing and composing the beauty is what separates the snapshot from the photograph. You might think this is a very ordinary type of flower in autumn. But I think it's composed well. I think that it's quite striking. You'll see that it's on the left, it's not in the centre. We'll talk some more about these guidelines for composition in this talk. The second quote here, to me, photography is an art of observation. It's about finding something interesting in an ordinary place. I found it's got little to do with the things you see, everything to do with the way you see them. Composition is about seeing things and composing them in your photograph. A pile of rope, but I think it's a good, interesting photograph. There's a sort of question at the front. Well, what is a camera? What can I take photographs with? And anything is the answer. Your phone, you might have a very small compact camera, you might have a very complicated, expensive single lens reflex camera, you might have an expensive compact camera, whatever. You can take photographs with all of these. All of them can create just as good pictures as the other. The more expensive you go, the more options you get, the more choices you have in running the camera. But you can still take good pictures, and that's primarily down to composition, getting the shape, pattern, positions of items in the image, getting them right. So how do I take great photos? I want to say as well that composition and creativity are far more important than technical things. It's not how the camera works or how smart your lens is or how long the lens is. It's nothing to do with that. Composition, or rather it's only partly to do with that. Composition and creativity are much more important. You can have the most brilliantly in focus and whatever picture, but if it's a muddy composition, it's not worth keeping. So this talk is focusing on what I believe is the most important aspect of photography, composition. And that's driven by this quote from Ansel Adams: the single most important component of a camera is the 12 inches behind it. That's your head, your brain, that which you look at the pictures with, the scene in front of you with. That's where your composition comes from. What does it mean, composition? It means paying attention to what will be photographed, how it is placed in relationship to other objects in the image, and how well the subject matter is expressed. What are the patterns, what are the shapes, what are the colours in the image? And it means, does it look balanced? Now I know the word balance is a bit soft, it's hard to define it, but you look at a picture and you know what it is. It does look reasonably balanced. Pardon me. Does the photograph get your viewers to look at the main subject, or do they get lost in too much detail? You really don't want that. You want them to see what you want them to see. And one of the main criteria for me is, does it look nice? It's very subjective. Would I hang it on my wall? So this is what we're really going to be talking about. They're called the rules of composition. Now, there are hundreds of rules. I've taken out a few of them, and I'm going to focus on a few of them in more detail. But there's lots. Rules of thirds, simplicity, reduce distractions, don't have a white blob at the edge of the frame. Gosh, that's important. Rule of symmetry. But before I go into some of those rules, it's important to know that actually they're not so much rules as guidelines. In my view, it is really important to know them, to understand them, and to have them in mind when you're taking photographs. But don't be ruled, as it were, by them. They are guidelines only. And in composition, you're looking for shapes and patterns that are interesting or intriguing. This eye, actually it's the windscreen of my car in a winter snow. That's the wiper. And it's an intriguing pattern. It takes a bit of time to think through what is it actually of. Or it could be a scene that tells a story, as in this picture where my wife and myself are playing football with our two grandchildren. Reuben, in the front, has kicked a ball into the bushes, and both my wife and myself are saying, "Go and get it." There's a whole story there. And I think a picture that tells a story is really very powerful. Scenes that have an emotional hit. This is one of those, oh, how cute pictures. Fluffy little duckling, fast asleep in the grass. All his siblings are around him, mum is nearby, but he's fast asleep. That's such a cute picture. That's a good one. It could be a picture like this, which is mostly blank. The actual detail of the picture is on the far right, down at the bottom, a very small part of it is the sun setting over a pier, Worthing Pier on the south coast. But the rest of the picture is blank, but with the colours of the sky. And that blankness is important to create the whole image. If you had just the sky, the sun setting over the pier, and that was all it was, it would be interesting but not dramatic. This one gives a sense of drama, also a sense of drama and some peace to the picture. These are your pictures that you're taking, and you've got a digital camera, so the pictures are free. You can experiment. You can be willing to be weird. And I think this is a typical example of a photo where I knew what I was trying to take, but it came out like this. And I played with it a bit. I turned some of it into black and white. But you can play. You can do experiments with your photography. You can try things out. I'm going to talk about some of those rules. The rule of thirds is the first one. And here's a photograph from a golf club near where I live. It's a nice picture. And one of the reasons it's nice is that it works from the rule of thirds. Now, the rule of thirds is basically a noughts and crosses box, lines put on top of the photograph. So the intersections are at the thirds of the picture. The lines are on thirds of the picture. I've got, in this photograph, the bottom horizontal line is roughly through the bottom of the trees. Not quite, but close enough. And below it is the light, the sunlight coming in through those trees, through the trunks. The top one is the sky. Again, not perfect, but it's close enough. And the vertical lines. It seems like there's little dents in the trees at each one of them. It makes the photograph more pleasant to look at. The rule of thirds, and these rules in general, are rules that have been defined over the hundreds and hundreds of years by artists, painters and sculptors. It's not a photography thing. How they work, why they work, is another question. And there's something in our mind that feels better if the rules are obeyed. and feels more uneasy if they're not. And of course, that might be what you're trying to achieve. You may want to have a bit of unease in your viewer. Another one. This is a chap on a scooter in Lancing on the south coast, and it's a snapshot. It's a picture of him and his dog out for as it were, a walk. It's nice because if you look at the rule of thirds on this one, he's in a third. The lady at the back is a third. The top third is the sky. The bottom third is the bottom of his scooter and the bottom of the beach hut. That feels nice. It's a nicely balanced picture. Odd numbers. Another strange thing, the human mind seems to prefer odd numbers in its pictures. So here, two, I think red hot pokers or whatever from a garden, and it looks okay. I think it's nice. This one looks an awful lot better. There's three of them. One's filling the space, that's for sure. But three pictures feels more balanced. Maybe because the one in the middle is a fulcrum that you can see and feel. Three beach huts. Two beach huts doesn't have quite the same power as the three. This feels comfortable. Rule of simplicity. Keep it simple. Now this picture is quite nice. Nice flowers, colours are good, but it's hard to know what you're looking at. It's hard to read it, hard to see it. It's confusing because all the leaves and the flowers, they just jump out at you. There's no differentiation between the flowers and the leaves. It's hard to read it, hard to see it. This picture, on the other hand, is very easy to see. It's a flower pod, seed pod, and I focus just on the top of it. The rest of the picture is all out of focus. Nice green blur, which is not distracting, but it has got some things in it. And that one works. That's a nice picture. A seed pod, you may not find that the thing you want to hang on your wall, but as a picture, you know what you're looking at. Leading lines, same sort of thing. I want you to look at those people in the background. In this photograph, there's a path that leads you to them. And that's what your eyes do. They travel along the path up to the people, up to the right and then to the left to see the people, and then they may go on into the woods. And as a photographer, we use the phrase about your eyes traveling around a picture, and they do. It's again, something physiological. You look at it and your eyes want to follow the lines, the paths in the picture. So that's a helpful one. Leading lines leads your viewer to the thing that you want him to look at. Another one, I want you to look at this poor chap coming down. This is in the Great Pyramid at Giza. It's a 1 meter square tunnel. He is 2 meters or so tall, so it's quite a squeeze for him. The lines of the handrail and the lines of the handrail and the stairs going up all direct your attention to him. I don't want you to look at the rock. Or the stone. I want you to look at him. And the lines lead you to do that. So leading lines, they're quite helpful. Another one. In this picture, I want you to look at the people at the back of the picture. It's taken on the Underground in London. And there's two sets of leading lines here. There's the yellow, leading to the back. And there's also the blue, going through to the back as well. And that's quite striking. It forces your eyes, or it makes your eyes travel all the way to the back. You're not spending your eyes' time, looking at things on the immediate front, right and left. So the leading lines are helping me to direct you, the viewer, to what I think is important in the photograph. Space to breathe. In many photographs, you want to have a picture of a person or a car moving or whatever. It's important to have room for that creature or that object to have some space to move into or space to breathe. So in this picture of a seagull, up in the clouds. It looks as if any second he's going to bang his beak on the edge of the picture. And it feels uncomfortable. Now, again, that might be what you want to achieve. It certainly does for me. But it's not my objective for this photo. This is a far better one. And you can see the seagull in its full context. It feels more comfortable of him flying through the sky. He's got space to fly into. These rules are guidelines, but they are based on a lot of experimentation and trial and error over centuries. They work, usually. And it's always worth trying. It's easy to throw them away and say, well, that seems a silly rule, as this does to me on first sight. But it's not. They work the way people work. Another one, Space to Breathe. This boat, it's quite a nice picture actually, lovely colours, the seas in the background, a wind farm. But this is a far better picture. The boat has got more space around it. It doesn't feel cramped in the middle of the photo. That one feels easy. This one feels easier to cope with. During lockdown and the COVID crisis, I took photographs of birds and things in my garden, not being allowed out. This pigeon seemed to want a portrait, so I took a portrait of him, and I think it's quite nice, quite grand, quite nice and sharp, and I showed it to a friend, showing off. She said, but he's got no space. No, I hadn't noticed that, but it's true. So I edited it. I came up with this. I gave him space in front of him, space above him, and that's a lot more, much better as a picture. He's on the left, pretty much on a rule of thirds actually. His body and his neck and head are above the top rule of thirds. But it feels more comfortable. It feels that the person is, or a pigeon in this case, is more at ease. Not cutting the edge off things. Now we've all done this, haven't we? We've cut off people's shoes, we've cut off people's heads, we've cut off their hands, we've taken off the top of a bridge or a statue. And it's easy to do, but you shouldn't do it. So this picture from the Lake District on Derwent Water, it's an okay picture of these yachts, but it's unsatisfying because the top is missing. I'd like to see the top of those masts. This is a lot better. I can see the top, I can see the hill, snow-covered hill behind, mountain behind, but it's a lot more satisfying in terms of the boats. The whole thing is there. And the same way, if you take photographs of people, make sure that when you do cut off their legs, that you do it deliberately for an effect. If you do have their legs, make sure you've got the feet in them. Make sure the head is there. So in this case, here's a bird. I might have been too close for this one. In fact, this is the photograph. It's so much better, so much easier to look at. That one just feels a bit silly. You feel there's something missing. Indeed there is, the top of his head. Diagonals. We sort of looked at this with that photograph of the man in the pyramid. But diagonals. Here's water drops on a glass table, sun reflecting off them. And it's a bit meh, in my view. Put it in a diagonal. It feels a bit more powerful. It's a bit more dynamism with it. You've got the water drops going left to right. You've got the reflection going right to left. It's more exciting to look at it that way. And here's another one, is an autumn leaf. And this is a better picture of it. That looks okay, but this one looks more dramatic. And the diagonals help it to be more dramatic. The background. If you're photographing something and you want to emphasize it, you may want to make sure the background doesn't distract. Now this background, actually there's an awful lot in it. Can't remember, but there's bushes, there was sky, clouds, whatever. And they could be a real distraction. So I focused solely on the flower. all the rest of the picture is out of focus. And that's good because it means you don't spend your time looking at the back, you do spend your time looking at the flower. The back has got interest. It's got some lines and patterns and shapes and colours in it, but it's not distracting you. Like in this picture, where the whole of the picture seems to be in focus, it's the end of a charity race of 8 miles or 16 miles run by Love Kingston, which is a great charity, by the way. And these two ladies have just finished. They've done 16 miles and they're exhausted and hugging each other to say, made it. But you look at it and you're looking at the back as well and thinking, well, there's people there. What should I be looking at? The person on the left running in. It's quite confusing. So this version is a lot better. These two stand out. The rest of it is slightly blurred, slightly out of focus. And I've deliberately done that so that you focus on the people I want you to focus on, which are those two runners, the two ladies. As I said, these are guidelines. Call them rules, but rules are made to be broken. Let's look at some examples of what I've done to show that. So here's one, rule of odd numbers, that's 1, 3, 5, etc. I've got 4 beach huts in this picture. I think it looks really good. Maybe because there's 3 and 1, but it's 4 beach huts. Similarly here, I've got 2 birds in the picture. Swan and the duck staring at each other. Swan looking rather, well, what is looking like? Just looking at the swan thinking, what are you doing there? The 2 birds, I could have had extra birds in the picture, but actually it's all about those 2. It works with just the 2 of them. Rule of thirds. Here's a bird, blue tit, gold tit, I'm not sure which one, on a bird feeder at Poleston Lacey. There's no thirds in this at all. It's a 2 halves, the left and right. Nice picture. It doesn't need to be thirds. Similarly, this doesn't show the rule of thirds. It's got just the one inside of a tulip. I took this in Arundel. They have an annual tulip festival in March and April, which is really, April and May rather, which is really super to go to. It works. It's got bright colours. It's got the stamen in focus, the little bits of it. It works really well. It's not rule of thirds. You don't have to have a rule, but when you break it, be sure what you're doing it for. Another one. Really, this is 2 halves, 2 wheels stuck together, and in the middle is a leaf about to be squashed. It's not rule of thirds, but it works. Well, thank you. That's a very quick run through some of the rules and guidelines on composition. Have a go at playing with them, take photographs, experiment, and then come back on the next talk on understanding the controls on your camera. I'll see you next time.